Hi, Bishop Art Theater friends and Jubilee Theater friends and TCU friends. So I am here with Dr. Harry Parker, director of Thurgood, that is running at Bishop Arts Theater Center, February 8th through the 25th. So I have Dr. Harry Parker here. Harry, tell us a little bit about yourself before we start.
I'm a director. I occasionally write. I grew up in Oklahoma. I went to school at TCU a long time ago. And then I went to graduate school at the University of Kansas, and I've been a college professor and director for a long time, 30 plus years. I've taught in Iowa. I came back to Kansas, and then 15 years ago I got to come to TCU and become the chair here, and have loved it. And one of the advantages of teaching here as a theater artist is that this is such a vibrant theater community in Dallas-Fort Worth. And so I've actually directed more shows professionally at other theaters than I have at TCU in my 15 years here, and have enjoyed that very much.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to taking a show to Bishop Arts. That's exciting.
Well, thank you, and we're excited to have that come over to Dallas and be a part of our season for the 2017-18 year. So this is your second time.
On Thurgood.
On
yes,
Thurgood.
It is. We did it last year at Jubilee.
Yeah. So tell me something that might be different this time around, or that you feel like, that was a light bulb moment for you that you didn't really maybe get the first time around.
Well, the world is different than it was a year ago.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of things have happened in our world that are a little bit different. There have been different and sometimes surprising attacks on civil rights in our country that have happened in the last year. And so a play about a civil rights warrior resonates a little differently than it did a year ago because of the world that we're living in. The play hasn't really changed.
Right.
But the world has changed. I do think in terms of the performance, the great Seymour Haynes plays Thurgood in the production as he did a year ago. And one of the things that I think is true, Seymour came into our second rehearsal process, which started a few weeks ago, extremely prepared. So, it's a huge task to do a one-man play.
Because it's a one-man play.
It's a one-man play, and the first act's about 45 minutes, and we take an intermission, and the second act is about 30 or 40 minutes. So it's a lot of text, a lot of stories, a lot of ideas. One of the things that I think is true this time is he's even more comfortable. He's more relaxed.
Yep.
It's more conversational. It's as if you were sitting in Thurgood Marshall's home or in a restaurant, and he was regaling you with stories from his life. And Seymour's really captured that beautifully. And so I do think the performance will be even richer. And if there are people that saw it last year at Jubilee and enjoyed it, I would really encourage them to come see it again.
Come see it again.
To bring people who haven't seen it. It's true that there are younger people for whom Thurgood Marshall might be mostly a name. And don't really know all of the things that he did and all of the things he accomplished. One of the things that's happened in the last year is there was a movie about him last fall.
There was a movie,
and so I think a new audience was introduced to him through that film. And I went to that film thinking it was going to be a biopic, that it was going to tell the story of his life. And it's one incident, which isn't talked about in the play. So I just found that terribly interesting as it delved in depth into a case that he tried early in his life, long before he was on the Supreme Court, and another example of what made him what he was and revealed who he was. And so I think there's been a lot of changes in the world, and it's a very rich time to do it. Yeah, I've told this story several times, but a lot of people have said, did you pick this play because of what's going on in the world? And the truth is, I didn't pick the play at all.
Right.
Jubilee picked it, and then Bishop Arts was interested in it and invited it to come over. But my standard line has been this: it's always the right time to do a civil rights play. There's never a bad time to do it.
There's always a struggle.
That's right. The struggle continues.
The struggle continues, and work like this really helps bring that voice back to the forefront.
Correct.
And as you know, and I'm sure we all knew as artists, art and theater arts is such a wonderful platform for that.
That's right.
For that. So, this is your second time doing it, and Seymour's second time doing it. Is there something about it, aside from what you just said, that maybe young audiences should take from it and should should really grasp onto when they come and see the show?
Well, I think a lot of it, to be blunt, is just to learn the history.
Learn the history.
Either hear it for the first time or relearn it.
Uh-huh.
I've told this story a few times, but last year when we did it at Jubilee, there was an intermission and a preview performance, and a youngster, maybe 8 or 9 years old, turned to the woman he was with, who I'm assuming was his grandmother, and said, "Tell me, is all of this true?" The first act told a lot of stories about Jim Crow laws, about legal segregation in our country and what that meant and what it does to people, and about Thurgood's desire to help bring that to an end. And this youngster said, "Is that true?" And Grandma took him by the hand, and they went over and sat on the bench. I didn't hear the rest of the conversation, but she spent the next 5 minutes telling him some things.
Yeah.
And his eyes were wide, and she took advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think the play can do that. Even those of us who are older who remember some of this. Thurgood was born in 1908, so this is a period of time that very few audience members really lived through as a contemporary of Thurgood Marshall.
Right.
So there's a lot of history for everybody to learn in terms of what it was like for him to go to a historically black college that had all white professors, and what that meant to them as an undergraduate, and the fight to get some African American professors to teach them at Lincoln. Stories like that, which are not necessarily the Supreme Court stories.
Right.
There's a lot of history here, and it's always worth hearing and fascinating.
So it's interesting that you said that story about all white professors at a historically black college teaching Thurgood and all that. So this might be a touchy subject, but sometimes we wonder who's directing the plays.
Right.
And obviously we see who you are.
Here I am.
Here you are, directing a play about Thurgood Marshall, an African-American historical figure, and the play chronicles his life, right?
Yes, it does.
And so have you had any talkback or any discord from the idea of you, an Anglo-white man, directing an African play, quote unquote?
Sure. I haven't. I haven't received negative commentary, and one of the reasons I think is a very practical theater reason, and that is because when you see the play, I hope, it's my goal, that the directing is pretty invisible.
Yeah. And
what you see is Summer Haynes, and what you see is Thurgood Marshall, and Summer is so dynamic and so charming and so real and so accessible to an audience that they forget that anybody even directed the thing. They're so enamored of that performance, you know what I mean? The play, interestingly, was written by a white man.
Right, George Stevens Jr.
George Stevens Jr. And so I don't think our race precludes us from being able to tell this story well. I'm glad we didn't use anything but an African-American actor to play. I think that might be a line I didn't want to cross.
Yeah.
But I haven't had any blowback on it, and I have appreciated it. Let me just be clear from my perspective. I don't see it as, I don't think it's ever a right for somebody to hire me as a professional director. It's always a privilege.
Always a privilege.
And so I am grateful to do it. When the artistic director at Jubilee asked me to do it, I wasn't gung-ho about it. The issue that you brought up was one, but another one was, I think of Thurgood Marshall as such an American hero. Yeah. But I was afraid the play was going to be reverential. Saint Thurgood. And so I was reluctant to do it until I read it. Okay. And then when I read it, I found out that there was a lot of humor in the play. There's a lot of laughs in the play. You'll enjoy the play very much. You'll laugh a lot. Yeah. And the character of Thurgood is self-deprecating and honest about his own flaws. And he was very human and not a saint. And that made me want to do the play because I could identify with this person and actually respect him more because he was honest about himself.
And, for me, what's great about it is, he fought for diversity. He fought for inclusion. And why wouldn't we want to represent that in the work that we do with the people that we're bringing to the table?
That's right.
And so I'm so glad to hear that you haven't had any negative commentary.
I haven't, and I can tell you that Summer and I, because it's sort of like me being adopted into his family. You know, we have a kind of a kinship when you direct another actor in a one-person play that's pretty intense.
I bet.
And pretty intimate. And now, after a year off, we're back together again. We have learned a lot from each other. We tell a lot of stories to each other in rehearsal about our own upbringing, about our own experiences with these issues. And I've learned a ton from Selmore. I don't know how much he's learned from me, but I've learned a ton from Selmore, and I've appreciated it.
So, what would you say that you would want audiences to take away from this performance of Thurgood, especially in our kind of political climate, our social climate right now?
Near the end of the play, Marshall is doing a press conference when he announces that he is finally going to retire from the Supreme Court. And one of the things that he says in that press conference, I've lifted it for Selmore, and he's grabbed onto that and taken it, because I think in some ways it's the heart of the play. And one of the things he says is, our country works best when it's people to people. When you treat everyone that you encounter with respect, and you give them opportunities, and you deal with their problems, and you don't work with groups. You don't label groups. These kinds of people are like that. These kinds of people should be treated like this. It's person to person. One of the things that he implies is that there are really good people who are black, and really good people who are white, and really bad people who are black, and really bad. It's not, your race doesn't necessarily define your character. It's people to people. Dealing with an individual and making a decision based on your experience of that individual's character. And for me, that's what the play is about. That we need to give ourselves the opportunity, by getting rid of all of these segregated laws, in Marshall's case, but all of these kinds of prejudices that separate us from each other, so that we can meet individuals and respect them and treat them the way that they ought to be, based on their character.
And by doing that, we can do that is through having conversations.
Yes. If you separate yourself, then you never have the chance.
Right.
And that's what the segregation laws were all about. It's like, we're just not even going to sit in the same train car as you. We're not going to sit in the same restaurant as you. And Thurgood talks about it in the play. He said, I would watch kids of mixed races play ball together before school. And then it was time for school, and they had to separate to go to school. And then school was out, and they'd come back together and play ball. And he said, why can't they sit together in the classroom? And he came to say, I came to think that that's the best hope for the future of our country, for black children and white children to sit next to each other in school and learn not to be scared of each other, and learn to like each other, and learn to respect each other. It's a beautiful play, I'm telling you. It is filled with ideas we need to hear, Sergio.
We need to hear. And so please come to Bishop Arts Theater Center, February 8th through the 25th, to come see Thurgood by George Stevens Jr., directed by Dr. Harry Parker.
And starring Selmore Haynes.
Selmore Haynes. So please come and see us. Get your tickets now, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.